It was the day of Emma Parker's wedding, and the grand ballroom at the Metropolitan Hotel was a sight to behold. Glittering chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting soft light over the room as elegantly dressed guests mingled, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. The air was filled with laughter and the hum of excited chatter, a perfect celebration of love and new beginnings. Mrs. Linda Andrews, dressed in a sleek navy blue gown, stood by the edge of the room, surveying the scene. At 68 years old, Linda was still a commanding presence, sharp, graceful, and full of energy. But despite the festive atmosphere, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. She had been looking forward to this day for months. Emma, her granddaughter, was getting married to Ryan Thompson, a charming man she had grown to like, though something about him never sat right with her. But today wasn't about him. It was about Emma, the girl she had raised, supported, and loved since her parents passed away in a tragic accident when Emma was just 12 years old. Linda had poured her heart and her finances into giving Emma everything she could ever want. College tuition at a prestigious university, taken care of, a luxurious apartment when Emma returned home, of course, a designer wedding dress, a lavish reception. Linda had opened her wallet wide, and Emma had never hesitated to accept. As the guests continued to mingle, Linda approached the reception desk to collect her name tag. She scanned the small stack of cards, her eyes locking onto the one with her name written in large letters. The old purse. Her heart skipped a beat. Was this a mistake? She blinked, looking around, trying to make sense of it. A name tag. The old purse. No, it couldn't be. This was supposed to be a celebration of Emma's new life, of love and joy. But this felt like a cruel joke. Linda's fingers tightened around the name tag, a mix of anger and confusion bubbling inside her. She turned to look for Emma, her beloved granddaughter, and spotted her across the room, chatting animatedly with some bridesmaids. She marched over, clutching the name tag in her hand. "Emma," Linda said, keeping her voice calm, though she could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. "I think there's been a mistake with my name tag." Emma barely glanced up from her phone, rolling her eyes. "What mistake, Grandma?" she asked in her usual dismissive tone. "It says the old purse instead of Margaret Andrews." Emma waved it off, not even taking the time to apologize. "It's just a joke, Grandma. You know, funny nicknames for everyone." Linda looked around the room. The other name tags were full of playful, light-hearted humor. Mr. and Mrs. Perfect, Dancing Queen, and Party Princess. But this was different. It wasn't funny. It wasn't cute. "Old purse, Emma," Linda repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think it's funny." Emma let out a heavy sigh, turning her attention back to her phone. "Grandma, stop being so dramatic. It's just a name tag. It's not that deep." That was when it hit Linda. The weight of Emma's words, the disrespect, the complete lack of awareness felt like a slap. Her own granddaughter, the girl she'd raised from the ashes of tragedy, the one she'd poured every ounce of love and money into, had just casually dismissed her, reducing her to an object, the old purse. A walking ATM, a tool for Emma's convenience. Linda forced herself to breathe, steadying the rising anger within her. She tucked the name tag into her purse, a symbol of how far her love had been taken for granted. Without a word, she walked to her seat at table 12, the last one in the back, hidden behind the DJ booth. She sat down, the room spinning slightly as she took in the scene around her. Emma was dancing, laughing with her new husband, Ryan, the man who had always seemed a little too perfect to be true. Linda had always suspected something wasn't right with him, but today it wasn't about Ryan. It was about Emma. She glanced at the wedding cake in the center of the room, then at the extravagant floral arrangements, and thought back to the countless conversations where she had opened her wallet, made excuses, and kept her doubts silent. She had paid for it all. The venue, the dress, the flowers, the catering, everything. Yet here she was, pushed to the back, labeled the old purse, her role reduced to that of a passive money provider. Linda couldn't help but wonder, when did I stop being Grandma Linda and become just the old purse? Emma's laughter echoed through the room, and for a fleeting moment, Linda felt a pang of sadness. She had given everything for this girl, and now, it seemed, it wasn't enough. But this moment, this sharp pain, was just the beginning. Tomorrow, things would change. The next morning, Linda Andrews sat alone at her kitchen table, the weight of the previous evening still pressing heavily on her chest. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting long shadows across the polished wood floor, but she couldn't focus on the warmth or the beauty of the day. Her mind was consumed by what had happened at Emma's wedding. The name tag, the old purse, the casual cruelty. Emma had never once acknowledged the years of sacrifice, the financial support, the constant care and love Linda had poured into raising her. It had been so easy for Emma to dismiss her, to laugh off the insult as nothing more than a joke. But it was no joke to Linda. She hadn't wanted to believe it, but the truth had finally dawned on her. Emma, her precious granddaughter, had come to see her not as family, not as the woman who had stepped in to fill the void left by her parents' death, but as a financial tool. The old purse, always available to pay for whatever Emma and her new husband, Ryan, needed. Linda picked up her cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly as she gazed at the steam rising from the mug. She had spent so many years thinking that if she just gave Emma everything she wanted, she would never leave her. That by providing, she would show Emma how much she was loved, how much she was valued. But now, all those years of giving felt hollow, like coins thrown into a well, disappearing with nothing in return. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Emma. "Thanks again for last night, Grandma. Ryan and I are heading to Bali for our honeymoon. Love you." Linda stared at the message, feeling the anger rise in her chest. Not a single word of acknowledgement for the bill she had just been handed, the $50,000 wedding cost. It was as if the entire evening had been nothing more than a transaction to Emma, a way to get what she wanted, with no care for the woman who had made it all possible. Linda put the phone down, her fingers brushing against the cool surface of the table as she took a deep breath. She had to do something. She couldn't keep enabling this behavior, couldn't keep letting Emma walk all over her. For the first time in a long time, Linda realized that she had to put herself first. It was time to stop being the ATM and start being the grandmother Emma truly needed. Later that afternoon, Linda made a phone call to her bank, asking for a full review of her automatic payments. After a few minutes, the customer service representative emailed her the list. As she scrolled through the details, a pit formed in her stomach. Rent payments for Emma's apartment, $3,000 a month. Car payments, $800. Credit card bills, co-signed by Linda for emergencies. $500 minimum payments, though Emma regularly charged an additional $2,000 per month. Linda felt her heart sink as she realized the true extent of Emma's financial dependence on her. Over the past 3 years, she had been silently paying $700 every month to maintain Emma's lifestyle, without a single word of gratitude. Linda hung up the phone, staring at the list in front of her. Over $240,000 had been spent on Emma's needs and desires over the last 3 years. And yet, here she was, being humiliated in front of everyone at the wedding, called the old purse, and ignored once again. This wasn't love. This wasn't even family. This was manipulation. The following morning, Linda woke up early and walked to her office. The sunlight that streamed through the windows did nothing to lift her mood. She opened the drawer where she kept her financial records and began to go through them one by one. College tuition for Emma, $272,000. Apartment down payment, $60,000. The car, $35,000. The wedding, $45,000. Monthly support for 3 years, $240,000. Her mind raced as she calculated the total, $652,000. That was the price of Emma's love, or what Linda had convinced herself was love. But it wasn't enough, not anymore. Linda realized that she had given everything for Emma, and in return she had been treated like a tool, nothing more than a wallet to be used at will. It was time to make a change. Linda pulled out her calculator and did the math. If Emma were to pay her back at $2, $700 a month for the next 20 years, it would cover the bulk of the costs. But Linda wasn't doing this for the money. It wasn't about getting the money back. It was about teaching Emma a lesson she would never forget. A lesson about independence, responsibility, and respect. She put the calculator down and made a decision. She would stop paying. No more automatic payments. No more covering for Emma's mistakes. It was time for Emma to grow up, to face the consequences of her actions. By the afternoon, Linda was on the phone again, this time with her attorney, Patricia Wells, someone she had known for years. Patricia was sharp, methodical, and always had her back. "Pat, I need to review my will," Linda said, her voice steady. "I've been thinking about this long enough. It's time to make some changes." Patricia was quiet for a moment, then replied, "What are you thinking, Linda?" "I need to make sure Emma doesn't have access to anything anymore. No more money, no more assets, nothing. She needs to understand that she can't keep relying on me forever. I'm going to stop supporting her. I'm going to make sure she learns how to stand on her own 2 feet. Patricia's voice softened. "Are you sure? You've always been so generous with her." "I've been too generous. It's not love. It's time for her to grow up." Later that evening, Linda sat at her desk, watching the city lights outside her window. She had made the first steps toward changing everything. No more enabling. No more being used. It was time for Emma to take responsibility for her own life. And if that meant breaking her heart in the process, then so be it. Because sometimes, love meant saying no. And for the first time in years, Linda was ready to do just that. The days that followed felt like a slow burn. Linda Andrews walked through her house as if the world had tilted slightly off its axis. There was a strange stillness, an almost suffocating quiet that filled the spaces where once her decisions, her sacrifices, had been made. She wasn't used to this kind of silence, the kind that followed the withdrawal of financial support that had always been automatic, unquestioned. The decision she had made was clear, but the weight of it was still pressing down on her. Emma had no idea what was coming, no idea that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't comprehend. Linda had made it clear to herself that the time for enabling had passed, but the true test was about to come when Emma called. It happened 3 days after Linda had frozen all of Emma's automatic payments, stopping the tide of financial lifeblood that had kept her afloat. Emma's name appeared on Linda's phone in the late morning, her voice sweet but cautious, as if testing the waters. "Grandma, are you there?" Emma's voice was chipper, but Linda could hear the undercurrent of anxiety, like she was trying to gauge if something had changed. "I've been looking at the bills, and I think there's been some mistake." Linda leaned back in her chair, staring out at the skyline of the city. "What mistake, Emma?" "The rent didn't go through. I just got a notification from the bank that the payment didn't clear. You know the payment was due, right? For the apartment." Emma's voice was laced with a hint of frustration now. She was trying to stay calm, but Linda could tell she was beginning to worry. Linda's pulse didn't quicken. If anything, it slowed, as the anger that had simmered inside her for so long began to rise again. She took a steadying breath before responding. "I'm well aware, Emma, but there's no mistake. I canceled it." There was a pause on the other end, a silence that stretched out far too long. Linda knew Emma was processing what she had just heard, and the silence between them felt heavy, like a storm about to break. "Grandma, why would you do that?" Emma's voice cracked, her usual composure slipping. You know I can't afford it without you. Linda stood up and walked to the window, her hands pressed lightly against the cool glass. That's exactly why I did it, Emma. You've never had to afford anything before. I've paid for your life for years, and now it's time you figure it out on your own. There was a long silence before Emma spoke again, the words coming slowly, as if she were carefully considering each one. You're my family, Grandma. You've always helped me. You said you'd always be there for me. Emma's voice faltered now, sounding vulnerable in a way Linda had never heard before. Why are you doing this? Linda closed her eyes. The answer came easily, but it didn't make it any easier to say. Because love isn't just giving. Sometimes love is teaching. You've been using me, Emma. You've taken everything I've given and never once thought about the cost. You've turned me into a bank, and I'm done being that for you. You need to learn how to stand on your own, how to live your life without relying on me. There was a quiet sob on the other end of the line. Linda's heart twisted, but she didn't let herself soften. She couldn't. Grandma, please, I don't know what to do. I can't lose my apartment. I can't lose everything. Linda felt her chest tighten as she held the phone tighter in her hand. You're not losing everything, Emma. You're losing the comfort of knowing you can rely on me, but that's not the same thing. You have a job, you have a brain, you have everything you need to make it on your own, but you've been too afraid to face it. I'm not going to let you stay in this bubble any longer. Emma's words came fast now, desperation creeping in. I can't do it, I don't know how. Linda's voice softened for the first time in the conversation. Yes, you do. You've been doing it for years, just with someone else's money. Now it's time to do it with your own. There was a quiet, broken sob from Emma. Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take advantage of you. I didn't realize. Linda's heart clenched, but she didn't let herself cave. You didn't realize because I never made you, and I'm sorry for that, Emma, but it's time for you to grow up. I can't do this without you, Grandma. Emma's voice was a whisper now, filled with the kind of hopelessness Linda hadn't heard in years. I don't want to be alone. You're not alone, Emma. You're just learning that you don't need me to survive, and that's okay. You'll learn to live your life and build your own future without me holding you up. Emma stayed silent for a long while, her breathing shaky. I don't know where to start. Linda smiled softly, though she knew Emma couldn't see it. You start by taking responsibility for yourself. Start by looking at your bills and making a plan. Don't run from it, face it. And I'll be here when you need advice. But I won't be your bank anymore. Emma didn't answer right away, but Linda could feel the weight of the conversation settle between them. She had done the hardest thing, the right thing. She had taken the first step in helping Emma break free. The call ended with a soft, broken, I love you from Emma, but Linda didn't say it back. Not yet. Emma needed to prove to herself that she could stand on her own. And maybe, just maybe, Linda would say those words when Emma could finally stand tall without her help. The next few weeks were a blur of tension and silence. Emma called occasionally, asking for advice, but Linda stood firm. No more money, no more bailouts. She wasn't sure when Emma would fully understand the depth of her actions, but Linda had given her the tools. It was up to Emma now. And when the day came that Emma called with good news, she had found a small apartment she could afford on her own, taken up a second job to cover the bills, and even started budgeting. Linda felt a small weight lift from her shoulders. She wasn't sure if Emma would ever fully forgive her, but she knew she had done the right thing. Emma was learning, and maybe that was enough for now. The weeks that followed were quiet, filled with a tense kind of silence that hung in the air every time Linda entered her living room or sat down for dinner. She hadn't expected this process to be easy for Emma, but she hadn't expected it to be this hard for her either. Linda spent her days running her business, handling her investments, and staying busy with the things that had always filled her life. But every now and then, her thoughts would drift to Emma. She had stopped receiving the daily calls asking for money, but the guilt in Linda's chest had not faded. Was she doing the right thing? Was Emma really capable of making it on her own? Her doubts were put to the test one Friday evening when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Linda opened the door to find Emma standing there, her face pale, her clothes rumpled, and her eyes bloodshot as if she had been crying. She didn't even look like herself. The confident young woman who had walked away from her grandmother with a new sense of independence seemed to have evaporated in the span of a few weeks. "Grandma, I need to talk to you," Emma said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "Can I come in?" Linda's heart clenched. She stood aside, letting Emma enter, and closed the door behind her. Emma sank down onto the couch without a word, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had come crashing down on her. "Tell me what's going on," Linda said, her voice steady but soft. She had expected this. She had known that the path to independence wouldn't be easy for Emma, but she didn't expect her to fall apart so quickly. Emma took a deep breath before she spoke. I did everything you said. I found a new apartment. I took the second job. I've been budgeting, Grandma, really, but it's not working. I'm falling behind on my bills. I can't keep up with everything. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to go back to depending on you, but I'm drowning, Grandma. I need help." The words hung in the air between them. Linda could feel the desperation in Emma's voice, the panic of someone who had thought they were ready but hadn't been prepared for the reality of independence. Her heart twisted, but she didn't let herself show it. This was the test. Linda sat across from her granddaughter, folding her hands in her lap, her gaze steady. "What do you think you need help with, Emma?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. "I need money. I can't pay the rent. I can't even buy groceries at this point. My second job isn't enough, and the hours are killing me. I can't do it all on my own. I'm scared. I've never had to do this before, and now I'm failing." Linda took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine whether Emma truly understood the lesson she was supposed to learn. She had to be firm, even when her heart ached seeing Emma in such distress. "You're not failing, Emma. You're struggling, but that's part of the process. You don't learn anything if things are easy. You're in this position because you've never had to deal with the consequences of your own actions before. You've always had someone else to bail you out, but now it's your responsibility to fix it." Emma looked at her with wide eyes. "So, you're not going to help me. You're just going to let me suffer." Linda's voice remained calm, though there was a firmness to it. "No, Emma, I'm not going to let you suffer, but I am going to let you figure this out. You can't go back to what was. You've been running from reality for years, and now that you're facing it, you want to quit. That's not the way to get through life. You need to face your mistakes and learn from them, and that means you won't get another dime from me." The silence in the room was thick, and Emma's face crumpled as she struggled to hold back the tears. "But I can't do this on my own. I'm scared." "I know you are," Linda replied softly. "But fear doesn't go away by running from it or by asking someone else to fix it for you. It goes away when you face it head-on. You need to learn how to manage your finances, how to live within your means. These are skills that will serve you for the rest of your life, and they're not easy to learn. But you're going to learn them, whether you want to or not." Emma trembled, but she didn't argue. She didn't know what to say. Linda's words cut deeper than any financial lesson. Emma had expected her grandmother to swoop in and save her, as she always had before. But now she was seeing something different. She was seeing a woman who loved her enough to let her fail. "I'm not giving you money, Emma," Linda continued, her voice gentle now but resolute. "But I will help you figure out a way to make things work. You can come to me for advice, but I won't carry you anymore." Emma swallowed hard. "What if I can't make it? What if I lose everything?" "Then you'll learn from it," Linda said, her voice steady. "And you'll start over, but you won't give up, and you'll keep going because that's what life is about. You don't stop because things get hard. You keep moving forward." Emma sat there for a moment, her body shaking with the weight of it all. But Linda didn't speak again. She gave Emma the space to think, to process. Finally, Emma looked up at her grandmother, her eyes red but resolute. "I'll figure it out. I'll make it work, I promise. Linda smiled, proud of the determination she saw in Emma's eyes. I believe you. The next few weeks were a mix of progress and setbacks. Emma struggled to adjust to the realities of paying bills on time, balancing 2 jobs, and living frugally. There were days when she doubted herself, when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But little by little, she found her footing. She called Linda for advice, asking for tips on budgeting, how to prioritize her expenses, and even for help negotiating with her landlord to avoid eviction. Through all of it, Linda remained firm but supportive. She wasn't going to let Emma give up, but she wasn't going to make things easy, either. She had learned that true love sometimes meant stepping back and allowing someone to rise on their own. And then one afternoon, a month after Emma had come to Linda in tears, Emma called her again. This time, her voice was different, stronger. Grandma, I just paid off my credit card balance for the first time in my life. I managed to save $200 this month. It's not much, but it's something, and I feel proud. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. Linda's heart swelled. I knew you could do it, Emma. I knew you had it in you. I couldn't have done it without you, Emma said softly. Thank you, Grandma. Linda smiled, her eyes softening as she looked out the window. You did it, Emma. You did it all on your own. 6 months had passed since Emma first came to Linda in tears, pleading for help. The transformation, though slow, was undeniable. The young woman who once couldn't fathom life without her grandmother's financial support had, against all odds, found a new sense of purpose and strength. It hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Linda watched from a distance, her pride swelling as she saw the subtle, yet significant changes in Emma. The once carefree young woman who spent money without thought now calculated every expense, budgeting with careful consideration. The frantic, anxious calls asking for bailouts had stopped. Instead, there were calls asking for advice on managing her bills or how to negotiate for a better deal on utilities. Emma had even made a new friend, a colleague from her second job, who shared the same passion for financial independence. But Linda wasn't ready to let her guard down. She knew that while Emma had made strides, the road ahead would still be filled with challenges. Independence was a lifelong lesson, and Linda's job wasn't finished yet. It was late one evening when Emma arrived at Linda's house. The doorbell rang, and Linda, now in her late 60s but still sharp as ever, opened the door to find her granddaughter standing on the doorstep, smiling with an excitement Linda hadn't seen in years. "Grandma, can I come in?" Emma's voice was filled with anticipation, and there was a slight gleam in her eyes as though she were on the verge of sharing something big. "Of course, sweetheart. What's going on?" Linda asked, stepping aside to let Emma in. Emma walked into the living room, her posture straighter, more confident than Linda had ever seen her. She pulled out an envelope from her bag and handed it to Linda. I have something for you." Linda looked at the envelope curiously and slowly opened it. Inside was a bank statement and a check. Her brow furrowed as she glanced between the check and Emma's beaming face. The amount on the check made her pause. It was for $12,000. "Emma, what is this?" Linda asked, her voice soft but filled with wonder. "I've been saving, Grandma," Emma said, sitting down beside her. "Every paycheck. I paid off my credit card debt and I've been budgeting like you taught me, and now I've saved enough to pay you back." Linda's heart squeezed in her chest and she blinked, taken aback by the gesture. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted you to feel like you owed me. This was never about money." "I know, Grandma, but this is about proving to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. I wanted to give this to you, not because you asked for it, but because I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I've learned to live within my means, and I want you to know I appreciate everything you've done for me." Linda reached out and placed a hand on Emma's. "You've already given me more than enough, Emma. The fact that you're here today, that you've learned and grown, that's the gift. That's all I ever wanted." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I couldn't have done it without you, Grandma. You pushed me when I needed it the most, and for the first time I feel like I can actually take care of myself." Linda squeezed her hand and pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. You've come so far, sweetheart. And this," she held up the check, "this is just a small part of your journey. You've got the tools now, you know how to handle life, and you're going to continue to succeed." For a moment, they sat there in the quiet of the living room, the weight of the past months settling between them, but also a sense of peace that had never been there before. Linda had always thought that love was about giving everything, but she realized now that it was about giving the right things at the right time. And the greatest gift she had given Emma was the strength to stand on her own. Several weeks later, Emma's life was beginning to take shape in a way Linda had never imagined. She was thriving in her new apartment, having built a budget that included savings for the first time in her life. Her second job had become something she no longer dreaded. It had become a part of her new routine, one that was teaching her about responsibility and the value of hard work. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Emma called Linda again. This time, her voice wasn't filled with uncertainty or fear. It was filled with excitement. "Grandma, I got promoted," Emma said, almost breathless with excitement. "I've been working hard at my second job, and they offered me a full-time position with a raise. I'm going to be a manager." Linda's heart swelled with pride. She could hear the pride in Emma's voice, and for the first time in years, Linda felt like she had given her something invaluable, the ability to chase her dreams without relying on anyone but herself. "That's amazing, Emma. You've worked hard for this. You earned it." "I couldn't have done it without you," Emma replied. "Thank you for everything, for making me face the truth, for teaching me how to live without hiding behind your help." Linda smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You did it, sweetheart. I always knew you could." A year later, Emma invited Linda to dinner at her apartment. It was a small, cozy space filled with plants, personal touches, and a sense of calm that Linda hadn't seen before. The apartment was hers, truly hers. It wasn't grand or extravagant, but it was something Emma had worked for, earned, and paid for with her own hands. They sat at the small kitchen table, sharing a simple meal together, and Linda realized that the bond they shared was stronger than it had ever been. No longer was it a relationship built on financial support. It was one built on mutual respect, love, and understanding. Emma had finally come into her own, and Linda had played a crucial part in that journey. As they finished their meal, Emma stood and pulled something out of a drawer. It was a small, handcrafted journal, its cover worn with use. She handed it to Linda. "I've been writing down everything I've learned this past year," Emma said, her voice soft. "I want you to have this. It's my story of how I learned to stand on my own, how I grew up, and you're in every page." Linda opened the journal, her eyes misting over as she read the words Emma had written. The lessons, the struggles, the victories, all of it laid out on the pages before her. "Thank you, Emma," Linda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is the greatest gift you could have ever given me." "I've learned so much," Emma said softly, "and now I want to keep learning and keep growing." Linda smiled, closing the journal and placing it gently on the table. "And you will. You're just getting started." As the evening drew to a close, Linda stood and embraced her granddaughter tightly. And for the first time in a long time, she realized that her job as a grandmother wasn't over. It had only just begun. Because love, real love, was about giving someone the strength to become who they were always meant to be. The weeks turned into months, and Emma's life continued to flourish in ways Linda had never imagined possible. Her promotion at work had not only given her a sense of pride, but had also opened doors for new opportunities. She had become a manager, a role she once thought was beyond her reach. Her finances were in order, her savings were growing, And most importantly, she had stopped leaning on her grandmother for every little thing. Linda often watched from the sidelines, proud but still cautious. The scars from the past, those years of overcompensating, enabling, and giving too much, had not fully healed in Linda's heart. But seeing Emma thrive, seeing her mature, gave Linda the hope that perhaps her decision had been the right one. But the journey wasn't over yet. One evening, Linda's phone rang. It was Emma. There was a certain urgency in her voice that made Linda's pulse quicken. "Grandma, I need to talk to you," Emma said, her voice trembling. "It's about Ryan." Linda's stomach dropped. Ryan, the man Emma had married, the one she had put all her trust in despite Linda's doubts. Linda had hoped that Emma's decision to stand on her own would distance her from Ryan's influence, but the reality was always more complicated. "Is everything okay?" Linda asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, Grandma, it's not okay. I don't know how to say this, but I found out something about Ryan. He's been hiding things from me, big things." Linda felt a tightness in her chest. "What kind of things?" There was a long pause on the other end. Linda could almost hear Emma steeling herself for what she was about to say. "Ryan's been lying about his finances. He's in debt, more debt than I even knew, and he's been using our joint account to cover it up. I found out that he's been gambling again, a lot." The words hit Linda like a punch to the gut. She had always feared this, always suspected that Ryan was not the man Emma thought he was. But hearing it from Emma herself was like reliving the past mistakes all over again. "I tried to confront him, but he got defensive," Emma continued, her voice shaking now. "He said I didn't understand, that he was going to fix everything. But I can't trust him, Grandma. I don't know what to do." Linda took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Emma, you've come so far. You're not the same person who needed someone to bail you out. You've learned to stand on your own. And this is the hardest test you'll face. But you can face it. You're strong enough now." Emma sniffed, wiping her eyes. "I don't know if I am, Grandma. I love him, but I don't know if I can keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. I feel so lost." Linda's heart broke for Emma. She knew all too well the struggle between love and self-respect. It was a battle she had fought in her own life, and it seemed Emma was facing it now. But Linda also knew that Emma's greatest strength was her ability to recognize the truth, even when it was painful. "You've already made the hardest decision, sweetheart," Linda said gently. "You've learned that you deserve better than a life built on lies and deception. No matter how much you love someone, you cannot lose yourself in them. You are worth more than the promises of someone who doesn't respect you." Emma was silent for a long time, and Linda could feel her granddaughter's inner turmoil. Finally, Emma spoke again, her voice firmer now, though still filled with doubt. "I think I need to leave him. I don't want to. I don't want to break up our marriage, but I can't keep living like this. I can't keep letting him drag me down with him." Linda nodded, though she knew Emma couldn't see her. "You're right. You deserve a life where you don't have to carry someone else's weight. A life where you're free to live your truth, to make your own decisions. You've worked so hard to get here, Emma. You're not the same person you were before. You've learned how to trust yourself." Emma's voice was stronger now, more certain. "I'm scared, Grandma, but I know it's the right thing to do. I can't keep pretending. I have to walk away, even if it means letting go of everything I thought I knew." Linda smiled softly, feeling a quiet pride wash over her. "I'm proud of you, Emma. You're making the right choice. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And you're not alone. You have me. You always will." A few days later, Emma came over to Linda's house, a suitcase in hand. She had made the decision. She was leaving Ryan. "I packed my things, Grandma. I don't have anywhere else to go, but I know I can't stay with him anymore. I need to start over," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly as she stepped inside. Linda hugged her tightly, feeling both the weight of her granddaughter's decision and the strength behind it. "You don't need to have everything figured out right now, Emma. Take it one step at a time. You've already come so far." They sat together in the living room, talking through the next steps. Linda helped Emma sort through the practicalities, finding a new place to live, figuring out finances, and most importantly, healing. Emma was strong, but she needed time to recover from the betrayal and the pain of letting go. Over the next few weeks, Emma settled into a small apartment of her own. She found peace in knowing that she had made the right choice, even if it was hard. She focused on her career and continued to build her independence, not just financially but emotionally. She was rediscovering who she was without the weight of Ryan's lies holding her down. And through it all, Linda was there, offering guidance, providing comfort, and reminding Emma of her strength. One evening, as they sat together, Emma looked at Linda with a smile that was more genuine than any Linda had seen in years. "Grandma, I've been thinking," Emma said softly. "I'm finally starting to believe what you always told me, that I'm enough, that I don't need anyone to define me, and I've been taking it one day at a time, trying to make sure I never go back to who I was before." Linda reached out and held Emma's hand. "You've always been enough, Emma. You just needed to see it for yourself. I'm proud of you, and I know you're going to keep growing, keep becoming the person you're meant to be." As they sat there together, Linda realized that the journey wasn't about what she had given Emma. It was about what Emma had learned to give herself. And for the first time in a long time, Linda knew that Emma was ready for whatever came next. She had found herself, and that was something no one could ever take away. The months had passed, and Emma had begun to settle into her new life, a life that was more hers than ever before. Her career was thriving, her finances were finally on track, and she was rebuilding her sense of self, piece by piece. Each day, she moved further away from the emotional chains Ryan had placed on her, each step bringing her closer to the independent woman Linda had always known she could be. But as she learned to navigate her newfound freedom, a shadow of doubt still lingered in Emma's mind. Though she had walked away from Ryan, though she had made the hard choices to regain control of her life, a small part of her still questioned whether she was strong enough to truly stand alone. And more than that, she feared the final step, forgiving herself. She had tried to bury her guilt, but it wouldn't stay hidden. She had let herself fall for Ryan's lies. Her desperation for love had blinded her to the truth. And now she carried the weight of that decision like a burden she couldn't shed. It was late one afternoon when Linda's phone rang. It was Emma, her voice low as if she were carrying something heavy. "Grandma, can I come over? I need to talk." Linda's heart tightened. She had seen this before, the tone of voice, the hesitation. She could tell that Emma had reached another crossroads. "Of course, sweetheart. Come over whenever you're ready," Linda said, her voice warm but laced with concern. Within an hour, Emma arrived at Linda's house, her face pale, her eyes tired. She was carrying something, but it wasn't just the weight of her physical belongings. It was the weight of her emotions, the burden of unresolved pain. "Grandma, I don't know what to do anymore," Emma said, her voice breaking. She sat down on the couch next to Linda, looking lost in a way Linda hadn't seen in months. Linda sat beside her, placing a hand gently on Emma's. "What happened? What's going on?" Emma looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the sleeves of her sweater. "I keep thinking about everything that happened with Ryan, about how I let him manipulate me. I feel so stupid, Grandma. I should have known better. I shouldn't have let myself get to that point." Linda's heart clenched, but she held her ground. "You did what you thought was best at the time, Emma. You're not stupid. You were looking for something, and you were misled. It happens. What matters now is that you learned from it. You've changed. You're not that person anymore." Emma shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I can't forgive myself. I feel like I ruined everything. I was so desperate for love, for someone to care about me, that I let myself ignore all the signs. And now, it's like I've wasted so much time, Grandma. I can't shake this guilt." Linda let out a long breath, her hand tightening around Emma's. "Emma, you have to stop punishing yourself for the choices you made in the past. You were doing the best you could with the information you had at the time. But that doesn't define you. What defines you now is how you've picked yourself up, what you've learned, how you've grown. You can't change the past, but you can control what happens next. And right now, you're choosing to heal. You're choosing to be better. That's what matters. Emma looked at Linda, her eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to let go of the guilt. How do I stop feeling like I've failed? Linda paused, her heart full of empathy. She had been through so much in her life, and she knew that guilt, especially self-inflicted guilt, was the hardest thing to let go of. But she also knew that Emma was strong enough to do this. Forgiveness is the hardest thing to give, especially to ourselves, Linda said softly. But I think the key is to stop seeing yourself as someone who failed. You've learned, Emma. You've grown, and you're not the same person who let herself be manipulated. You're someone who has faced the truth, who has learned to live on her own, who has reclaimed her life. You're not a failure, you're a survivor. Emma wiped her eyes, her breath shaky. But I keep thinking about the time I lost. I'll never get that back. Linda smiled gently. You're not the same person anymore, Emma. You're stronger now, and the time you lost isn't wasted if you use it to build something better. Your future is in your hands now. You don't have to keep looking back. Emma took a deep breath, letting Linda's words sink in. She had spent so many months focused on the past, on the mistakes she had made and the things she couldn't undo. But Linda was right. The future was hers to shape, and it was time to stop letting guilt hold her back. For the first time in months, Emma smiled. A small, tentative smile, but one that showed the first signs of peace. I think I'm starting to believe you. Linda gave her a soft hug. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay to let go. You've done the hardest part. Now it's time to forgive yourself. A few weeks later, Emma invited Linda to a small celebration at her apartment. It was a simple gathering, but there was a sense of warmth in the air, a feeling of accomplishment and growth. Emma had invited a few friends from work, colleagues who had supported her through her transition into her new role. Linda watched from the corner of the room, proud of the woman Emma had become. She had not only rebuilt her life from the ground up, but she had also learned to trust herself again. She had found her footing, and more importantly, she had found peace. Emma approached her, holding a glass of wine, and smiled warmly. Grandma, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done, for helping me see that I'm worthy of a better life. I couldn't have done this without you. Linda took Emma's hand and squeezed it gently. You've done it, Emma. You've done all the hard work. I'm just here to remind you of what you're capable of. And in that moment, as the room buzzed with laughter and conversation, Linda knew that Emma was ready for whatever the future held. She had faced the hardest test, the test of forgiveness, and she had passed. Linda smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lift from her shoulders. She had done her job. Emma had found her way. And now, it was time for both of them to embrace the future, together, but as equals. Years passed, but Linda Andrews never forgot the journey she had shared with her granddaughter, Emma. Their relationship had been tested, strained by mistakes, guilt, and misunderstandings. But it had also been strengthened by the hard lessons they'd both learned along the way. The woman sitting in her living room today, sipping tea with Emma beside her, was a far cry from the anxious, dependent young woman who had once relied on Linda for everything. Emma had come a long way. She had found stability in her career, built lasting friendships, and most importantly, found peace within herself. The guilt she once carried had lifted, slowly but surely, replaced by a deep sense of self-worth. She had learned to love herself, to trust herself, and to forgive herself for the mistakes she had made. And Linda, too, had learned that real love wasn't about giving everything, but about teaching the ones you love how to stand on their own. As Linda watched Emma, now sitting across from her with a smile that radiated confidence, she couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of pride. Emma was living the life she had always hoped for her, one that was hers and hers alone. The woman she had become was everything Linda had dreamed she would be, and more. Grandma, Emma said softly, breaking the silence between them. I've been thinking about everything we've been through. You know, there were so many times I didn't think I could make it, but you always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I don't think I ever thanked you properly for that." Linda smiled, her heart full. "You don't need to thank me, Emma. Watching you grow, watching you find your way, that is the reward. You did all the hard work. I just gave you a little push when you needed it." Emma laughed softly, her eyes bright. "I know, but still. I'm so grateful for everything you taught me. You showed me what real strength looks like. And now I'm finally starting to believe that I have that strength in me." Linda's eyes filled with tears, though she wiped them away quickly. "You've always had it, sweetheart. You just had to discover it for yourself." Emma stood and walked over to a small table, pulling out an envelope. She handed it to Linda with a mischievous smile. "I know it's not much, but I wanted to give you something. A little token of my appreciation." Linda opened the envelope and pulled out a beautifully framed photograph. It was a picture of the two of them from years ago, before everything had gone wrong, before the hurt, before the distance had grown between them. They were standing together in the garden of Linda's old house, smiling, carefree, and full of hope. It had been taken just after Emma had graduated from college, a moment before life had thrown its hardest challenges their way. "I had this framed," Emma said quietly, her voice a little choked, "because this moment, this memory, represents who we are, and no matter what happened after, this moment was real. It's the love that's always been there, even when things got hard." Linda stared at the photograph, her heart swelling with love for the young woman in front of her. "I'm so proud of you, Emma, more than you'll ever know." Emma sat back down beside her, her hand resting on Linda's. "And I'm proud of you for showing me what love really means." The years had taught them both what it meant to love unconditionally, but also to let go when it was necessary. To allow someone to fall and to help them stand again, not by carrying them, but by teaching them how to walk on their own. The relationship between Linda and Emma had been reborn. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They no longer relied on one another for financial security or emotional validation. They had become equals in a way they had never been before, each respecting the other's independence, but knowing that the love they shared would always bind them together. As the evening sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the room, Linda looked at Emma, her granddaughter, now fully grown and independent. She smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of peace. "You've come a long way, sweetheart," Linda said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "And so have I." Emma smiled back, her eyes reflecting the light of a future that at one point seemed uncertain but now stretched out before her like an open road. "We both have, Grandma." And as they sat there together, in the stillness of that moment, Linda knew that the hardest part of their journey was over. Emma had found herself, and Linda had found a peace she hadn't known in years. They had both learned that love, true love, wasn't about rescuing someone, but about helping them find the strength to rescue themselves. The road ahead was still long, and there would be challenges yet to come. But for the first time in a long time, both women were ready for whatever came next. Together, but apart. Independent, but always connected by the bond that could never be broken. The story of Linda and Emma was one of transformation, of struggles, mistakes, redemption, and, ultimately, growth. Their journey had been filled with moments of tension and pain, but it had also been a testament to the resilience of love and the power of independence. Linda had spent years giving, sacrificing, and believing that her love for Emma would be enough to protect her from the world. But it was only when Linda made the difficult decision to stop enabling Emma's dependence that the real growth began. By teaching Emma to stand on her own, to face the challenges of life without relying on others, Linda gave her the greatest gift of all, the ability to be her own person, to trust herself, and to learn the value of her own strength. For Emma, the journey was one of awakening. She had once been blinded by the desire for love and validation, so much so that she allowed herself to be manipulated and controlled. But as she faced the consequences of her choices and learned to live independently, she found a deeper sense of self-worth. The journey was not without pain. There were moments of doubt, guilt, and heartbreak, but through it all, Emma discovered her true strength. She found the courage to let go of the past, to forgive herself, and to create a future where she no longer needed anyone to define her. Together, Linda and Emma had learned the true meaning of love. It wasn't about giving everything or expecting perfection. It was about standing by each other through the hard times, giving space for growth, and trusting that the other person would be able to navigate their own path. Their relationship had been tested, but it had been rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. As the story closed, Linda and Emma were no longer bound by the past. They had both found peace and strength in themselves, but their love for each other remained unbreakable. They had learned that the greatest gift a person can give is not financial support or constant reassurance, but the space to grow and the trust to let go. In the end, the journey of Linda and Emma was not just about overcoming obstacles. It was about embracing change, finding strength in the face of adversity, and most importantly, learning to love oneself fully and unconditionally. And as they looked toward the future, they both knew that no matter what came next, they would face it not as two people bound by dependence, but as two strong, independent women who had each other's backs, no matter what.